What is up, everybody, and welcome to FLW Videos. In today's episode, we're doing something a little bit more traditional to my channel, and that is the deep dive. We'll be talking about the Pokemon Rhyperior today from a raid perspective, from a PvP perspective, and deciding, is it worth powering up? Is it worth unlocking a secondary charge move? And then, of course, talking strategy along the way. I have to say, this Pokemon has a lot of hype going around it, and definitely for good reason. It's actually going to be doing very well from the raid side as well as the PvP side, so hopefully you are very excited about this Pokemon. Anyways, if you do enjoy this episode, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe, but without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the video. Rhyperior, with a max AP of 3,733, Rhyperior is a dual-type Pokemon of the Rock as well as the Ground typing. And of course, we are going to be highlighting this Pokemon today, specifically talking about Rock Wrecker, but I'm also going to be running some results as well from the ground side, so you can have something to do with those past Rhyperiors that you already have, since you can't TM over to Rock Wrecker, but I'm not salty at all. All jokes aside, let's go ahead and get into this Pokemon. The first thing we're going to take a look at is the actual stats of this Pokemon, and this may come to a big surprise to some people. It's actually amazing stat-wise. So when we take a look at it, the best stats as far as rankings are concerned is going to be that stamina stat as well as the attack stat. Attack stat getting ranked out at 65th. It has an attack stat of 241 and a stamina stat of 251. When we take a look at its overall ranking, it's actually ranked 16th in Pokemon Go from a statistical perspective, but regardless, what's in the hood of Rhyperior, it's looking absolutely amazing. It's just going to, of course, come down to the moveset. So speaking of movesets, let's go ahead and transition off to that. I went ahead and added all of the moves for Rhyperior, so just kind of keep this in mind. We have so many moves that you can get in the charge move pool. Yeah, that is a lot going on right now. Because you have 5 available, it's kind of a TM trap, so just kind of keep that in mind. I would actually recommend you to go ahead and use that community day as an opportunity to force this Pokemon to get Rock Wrecker. That way, you, of course, get exactly what you want, and it's useful in that way, versus maybe holding off a few and then trying to TM them or something. You can always TM later if you do want to get yourself a ground team. But speaking of ground team, you would want to go with Earthquake, and then Mud Slap, and then, of course, using it as a rock type attacker, you would want to go with Smackdown, and then finally going with Rock Wrecker. So just kind of keep that in mind. If you have yourself some Rhyperiors now, hopefully you've already TM'd some of them over to the ground. If you don't have Rock Wrecker, of course, that's what I'm talking about. So hopefully you're not going to end up spending too many TMs on that situation. So now that we have that covered, let's go ahead and get into a raid where we're going to see Rhyperior from the rock side and talk about a little bit of the inconsistencies of the results. So here we go. When we go up against a Tornadus as just a traditional rock type attacker, Rhyperior ends up putting itself into the 2nd position only behind the Pokemon Rampardos. Now, one of the big differences is going to be the number of feints, so just kind of keep that in mind. That Rhyperior is going to be so much more of a tank than Rampardos is, but of course Rampardos can get out that damage because of its high attack stat. At the same time though, people would argue that Rhyperior is probably the better option to use. If you don't have a ton of Rampardos, it's going to be like the everyday player's #1 option. I totally agree with that. But where we see a big drop off, for example, is when we go up against Grass Knot, okay? In this particular instance, Tornadus also has access to Grass Knot, and we see Rhyperior's performance drop tremendously in that case. So now it's getting 40 feints versus Rampardos getting like 43 feints. But we saw before that Rhyperior had like a +10 on it, and now all of a sudden when the moveset changes like that, you see Rhyperior dropping down, and then you see Rampardos kind of staying in that #1 spot. So I thought that this was kind of an important thing to point out, that you are going to have to look out for particular movesets just because of Rhyperior being that dual type of ground as well as rock. Just kind of keep that in mind. So anyways, speaking of the ground type, we're going to go ahead and see a performance of Rhyperior as a ground type attacker. Now, of course, that already existed in the game, but it is good to have a refresher, because if you've got those non-community day Rhyperiors, maybe it's time to go ahead and designate them over to the ground typing or PvP. So anyways, as far as the performance is concerned, we're going to go up against an Aggron because it's going to be double weak to the ground typing. And you're also going to see that there are a lot of fighting type Pokemon in there as well. But if we just highlight some of the ground type Pokemon, you're going to see something like an Excadrill, a Groudon, a Garchomp, and then finally Rhyperior. So Rhyperior is consistently within the top 4 of ground type attackers. So it's number 2 as a rock with Rock Wrecker, and number 4 against ground types just with its regular moveset of Mud Slap and Earthquake. So there's actually quite a bit of flexibility that you could be doing with Rhyperior. So all in all, I think if you have one, there is something that Rhyperior can be decent at, if not very good at it. So just kind of keep that in mind. Anyways, now it's time to get over to the PvP side, and because I've been doing so many Go Battle Leagues, I have such a better understanding for this PvP side, so I think I'm going to be able to provide a lot of insight now. So let's go ahead and take a look at some results from PvP Poke, or PvPoke, and the first thing that kind of stuck out in my mind was going to be, of course, the moveset. So we're actually going to go with a Mud Slap, Rock Wrecker, and then Surf. So it's kind of an interesting situation. You want to have Rock Wrecker to be able to pull this off, but you're going to go with Mud Slap. So you may want to go with some Rhyperiors that you designate for raids as well as for PvP, because your old Rhyperiors that just have all the ground moves, it's not exactly going to work without Rock Wrecker. So just want to go ahead and point that out. You're seeing a lot of steel type Pokemon, so that is something to kind of keep in mind. It is a little bit difficult to counter them because something like a fighting type may not be as viable, especially in something like the Masters League. So you're definitely going to have to make sure you have a team that will check Rhyperior. Maybe consider running a Rhyperior as something like a lead. I want to say that it does best as a lead, and that is exactly true. So the highest ranking is as a lead, and it's a very safe option. Of course, going up against those grass type Pokemon, that's going to be kind of your biggest weakness, but you may not even see that many grass type Pokemon. It really just ends up depending how the meta is going to shape out. So of course we end with asking ourselves the question, is Rhyperior worth powering up? Absolutely, it has so much flexibility. Adding on that Rock Wrecker really propelled it up to a spot that I think it's worth it. But guess what? You don't even necessarily have to invest in Rhyperior to be able to use it at a high level. Because it is going to be available in the wild, that means you can get it up to level 35 and not even have to really invest. Just let it sit there, or it's not going to be that much to get it up to level 40. So I really enjoy these type of budget picks. Secondly, is it going to be worth it to unlock that secondary charge move? I honestly think it is, especially if you're wanting to use it from PvP. That's going to be like the main bread and butter for unlocking that secondary charge move. If you choose not to do that and just want to go with it as a pure rock type attacker for the raid side, then don't worry about unlocking a secondary charge move. I think that in this case, it's going to be specifically dependent on if you want to use it for PvP or not. And I'm very excited to go ahead and use this Pokemon from a raid side as well as PvP. But I of course want to know what you think about Rhyperior in the comments section below. How do you plan on using it? PvP? Raiding? Rock type attacker? Ground type attacker? Anything and everything? Let me know in the comments section below, and I will see you next time. If you want to develop a deeper connection, I would highly recommend you to check out Patreon. We've got a lot of really cool things going on over there. Check out all of these supporters that we have. We are almost up to 100. We are also posting some special content, some behind the scenes work. And if that is the type of thing that interests you, I would highly recommend you to check it out.